The events industry has been racked by widespread cancellations and delays, but determined experiential teams aren't resting on their laurels. See how these experiential teams and leaders are adapting their strategies to connect with audiences and generate leads without their most important tool. Kick it away, guys. Thank you for joining us. I think we still got muted on Michelle.
Hi there.
Hello.
Perfect. I'll let you guys have at it.
Well, great to meet everybody. I'm Brett from NVE, the experience agency in Los Angeles, coming live from LA.
I'm Michelle. I'm live from Tampa, Florida right now, where it's sunny and beautiful. I'm with Founder Made. I'm the CRO, and so excited to be here.
Amazing. Amazing.
You're muted, Linda. You're muted. Ah, there we go. Oh, now you're muted again. Now you're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect. You're on.
Great.
If you want to give a little background, Linda.
Oh, sure. Hi, I'm the Partnership Director of Think LA. I have a background in nonprofit event fundraising, experiential, focusing on experiential events. And I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're all excited to be here. I think we're waiting for our moderator to join. If that's kind of what I'm seeing here. Jennifer is coming on soon. So, yeah, it's great. Thanks for having us, Eric.
No worries. Yeah, I'll jump in for a second since while we wait for Jennifer because she's having trouble getting in. So taking it on the fly, guys. Yeah, would love to, I mean, easy one. Would love to know what you guys are doing to start. Like I've talked to all of you about like different things you're engaging in to adapt to this. You all are very involved in in-person events that we've been involved with, and they're all incredible. So would love to know, starting with Brett, what kind of things have you done to pivot and adapt to this?
Yeah, you know, we've been preaching for probably a while now that experiential doesn't necessarily mean event. Event means experiential, that's for sure. But generally speaking, experiential doesn't always equate to events. And we're finding that now more than ever, people are craving a sense of connection, a sense of community. And you know, you're seeing people activate that through all of the different social media platforms that are happening, Zoom, etc. So NVE has, you know, we've spent a lot of time right now in terms of the pivot, the word of the week, reimagining, you know, every type of event category that we produce: premieres, conferences, trade shows, publicity stunts, as well as, you know, the brand influence portfolio that we do, partnerships, influencer marketing, social promotions, and we've merged them together into no contact, integrated experiences that, you know, do create memory and do create a sense of community for brands. And we've given our all of our clients 1.5 million ideas on what that all looks like and what that landscape can look like without contact, but also not in the format of just virtual, not just stream it out there and say it was an event, which is really just a piece of content, not an experience. So a lot of reimagining.
Yeah. Michelle, how about you? What kind of stuff are you guys putting together?
So love hearing from Brett because he touches some of the areas that I do. I mean, we're so focused on trade shows. Our whole goal and mission is helping entrepreneurs in the wellness space build. And a lot of that is really focused on consumer products. And so how do you take the consumer product experience, which is so tactile, and make it virtual, but still maintain the efficacy and the overall experience that you would in a normal trade show, where you walk in our trade show and people are giving armpit facials, they're doing manicures. And so how do you recreate that and make that much more of an impact? And so to Brett's point, how do you be much more expansive? The market's flooding with virtual events and which is awesome. And of course, this is fantastic, but how do you actually create a branded experience in the home, but also maintain the remote nature of it and maintain the sanitization of it, and then get brands to jump on with us. And so what we've done immediately is just hit the ground running and set up as many calls with our existing partners as possible and say, what are you looking for? Who are you looking to target, and how can we help? And just that question alone has opened so many conversations, and things like DIY classes are popping up a ton. Virtual one-on-ones are popping up a ton. Things like lunch and learns and delivering meals that actually support the local restaurants are popping up. So tons and tons, but ear to the ground. And I think all of us are still looking for more and more ways to do that.
Absolutely. And Linda, how about you guys? How are you guys adapting with all the events you guys host?
Yeah, so things I think are very different on the small, scrappy nonprofit front, where we don't have a lot of bells and whistles. And at Think.LA, we produce about 40 events a year. So that's our main source of revenue in addition to our annual dues. And I think a lot of nonprofits are in that same situation, and companies that produce smaller to mid-size events. Classes are easy to move online. And I'm sure we've all been inundated with a plethora of webinars and classes and workshops and learn 15 things in 15 days. But for our large conferences and educational and social events, the main reason people are coming are to connect in person. And so we are sitting back, listening, learning as much as we can about other ways to connect people. But I think there really is no substitute for an in-person event. And we're going to have to see how long it will take before we can get back to what is our core business.
Got it. Thank you. And I got to circle back real quick. Michelle, what is an armpit facial?
I always love saying that because it catches the ear. So imagine laying back and putting your armpits up and someone pasting on a little scrub and doing a deep exfoliation on your pits. That's basically
for that, but okay.
Basically what it is. It's pretty amazing. Shout out to Kopari if you're listening.
Yeah, great brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next question I have for you guys is, with all the digital conferences, I've already seen it. Like, we started planning this again 4 weeks ago. Since then, I got responses when I was inviting friends and other people yesterday, the day before, saying, I've got Zoom fatigue. I can't do this anymore. So like, as people get sick of this version of things, because I've already talked to my own team, I don't think this is something we're going to be doing on a monthly basis here. What do you think are some alternatives to this, to sitting in front of a screen and listening to people talk?
Well, I would say it depends on the objective. We all right now are looking at how to replace the conference, the seminar, the trade show, which is this core kind of funnel of where events have gone, because you have these mega cancellations, South by Southwest, VidCon, potentially Comic-Con, and everyone is just looking to iterate on what already exists. It needs to be reinvented, it needs to be reimagined. Some of the platforms are doing a decent job of doing that. Some of the platforms, we've looked at Zoom, we've looked at Hopin, we looked at Run the World, we've looked at the virtual ones, the ones that are avatar based. There's one called Verbella that's really interesting. And we vetted them all the way through. So I think the question really is, do you replace these tent poles with just a virtual version? And I think the answer is no. I think that there are fundamental elements that are truly the DNA of an event, which is building connection, participation, and building community. That can be done without sitting in front of a screen for 10 hours. It can be done over a longer period of time. It can be done in a shorter period of time. It can be done in 20 minutes. So we're looking at a lot of different ways in which you would take those elements and you would facilitate them from a brand perspective. And you could do that through a lot of different mediums. Absolutely, probably shouldn't be in between a screen. But We're talking about Tinder for networking type features. We're talking about building longer lasting communities using Reddit's beta testing public access network, which exists, using even a Facebook group or Slack channels. There's a lot of community building that can be done. And those are the things that these things are all about.
Yep.
Not just, going into a stuffy convention center. I think that it's kind of a relief that we can do those things without them, but it will require a level of creativity to actually make it feel participatory and not just like a replication, or as I said, an iteration of something that already exists. Because that's what's right now, that first initial immediate reaction has been, okay, just how do we carbon copy it into a live stream Zoom format? And as you can tell, people don't even have an hour to sit in front of a screen, let alone 9 hours, 10 hours. It's much different than going to Vegas, being able to hit the blackjack table for 15 minutes and then go back to your networking seminar and then grab a drink and meet new people. And I think the last piece of it all, the piece that really implicates everything, is that these platforms aren't designed for those key elements. These platforms like a Zoom are really designed mostly for us to connect with people we already know, already in our ecosystem. You have to invite those people, whether it's your business partners, your friends, anyone you want. How do we create a sense of discovery of new people? Well, platforms don't have that yet. So we're working both on inventing what that technology is, but also creatively, what is that? What does that look like with existing platforms, existing tools? And I think there's a lot that can be done, just hasn't been integrated and implemented yet. So, that's my passionate point right now when it comes to how the experiential. But I think the last piece of it all is thinking about beyond those trade show style, conference style, seminar events. How does a brand create an experience? Because that's what experiential is all about.
Yep.
For consumers, without having consumers be able to touch or interact with in the physical world other consumers.
Did you see what iHeart Media did like 2 weeks ago? iHeart Media's whole performance, that was, I thought, like, it's that, again, you can't repeat that, but I thought that was such a well done special. I feel like we got just from too.
And there's one coming in 2 weeks, the Global Citizen one,
right.
that's going to be great. But again, I'm not sure that's an experience. Experience requires memory. It requires moments that are either elevated or participatory. And I still think you're watching a piece of content. You're not participating in those streaming concerts. What we need to do is send, we're talking about the physical advent calendar, where we'll send you the conference package, and each day you open up a different compartment, and that, gives you a piece of a physical world that can participate in that day. Participation would be the key. That is missing. So, hi Jennifer, welcome.
Hello.
Hey.
Technical difficulties in 2020. We still have them.
They exist. The good news is I didn't touch your question, so you can jump right in.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I am literally having like a meltdown because I've been quarantined for 23 days now, and there will have been like 2 or 3 different festivals that I will have gone to if we were not all in this situation. So my first question is about festival season, because there are events, there are a lot of brands, there are a lot of people that are doing activations. How are we going to evolve? What does this look like once, from a business standpoint? What do events like festivals and concerts look like post COVID-19? Because I'm very interested, because I'm like, man, it's festival season and I have not been to not one, and I'm getting antsy.
Well, I mean, I just answered a very long question, but I'm a partner in an event called the Neon Carnival, which is a 10,000 person Coachella adjacent party, in addition to doing, lots of activations at Coachella, Art Basel, South by Southwest, Comic-Con, you name it. I think that, and Michelle, you have been thinking about it as well, it sounded like. We have to think about the operational impact So my dad had the best story. He said to me, he's a huge Dodger fan, and he said, if you would have told me 25 years ago that I had to walk through a metal detector to go to a Dodger game, I would have said, you're crazy. So now I'm thinking about, well, what operational production elements of large festivals and live gatherings are we going to have to change that we would have thought maybe sounded crazy a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago? Is that temperature checks, right? Is that the new metal detector? Is there a new sanitation? Do you have to have a sanitation station every 150 feet? Just like your rule of like, you want to have a bartender for every 75 people or whatever, your practice is. Do we need to have a quarantine tent? There's already some CDC language on their website about gatherings. And once if you find somebody that is sick at an event, what is your response and quick action plan to move them out of a very public space, and where do you put them? Not event jail, right? So I'm sure from an operational standpoint, we've got to think about that. And then there's will those festivals really happen this year? And I've got a whole lot of discourse on that, but I'd let one of you speak. I don't know, Michelle, you probably.
Yes, Michelle or Linda, because you all both work for like big groups that put on different events and markets. So I'd be interested in hearing Linda and Michelle too.
So Brett touched on a bunch of different interesting points, which is like, what can the organizers do, which is fantastic and incredibly interesting. But then there's also the individual that's arriving, and there's so many movements around, of course, washing your hands. That was layer 1. 2, now we're all wearing our masks. But to the point of creating a personal connection, which is so part of the actual in-person experience, like how do you have those impromptu connections happen? But if you're wearing a mask, what does that do to the layer of creating that interaction if you can't really see the person's face? And something that came up on an interesting call was, can we even recreate the look and customize the mask itself so you actually are completing the face with the mask? There's so many different creative ways that people are thinking about it, but what is the individual doing that, even in the short term, let's say we start trickling out before the point of vaccine, but we are trickling out. What are people doing? And I think that was really interesting also to, how can we create more like design oriented apparel, gloves, etc., that can be brought to these interactions so you feel safer within it. I've even seen funny spoofs where it's like, the protective umbrella or the full mask that actually drops down. I know these are crazy things. I've even seen a plastic globe ball that was rolling down in Manhattan on some of these spoof videos, but I don't think that they're so crazy. And I even shot them to, our whole focus is on wellness, and I've shot them to our team. I'm like, maybe this is the newest wellness innovation. Maybe there are these little personal kind of globes and devices that are actually creating that containment in the short term before the point at which we are turning the corner of having those vaccines. And how do you complete the layer of creating the personal connection within it? And so I thought that was really interesting. And then to Brett's point too, within that, and actually in the short term before the point at which we're returning back to these in-person experiences, how do you create that home experience? And so we've seen things like, how do you have a founder? We're so about founder stories and telling that founder story to create humanization within the brand. And so can we create a recipe in full, like think Blue Apron, and have a top chef actually walking you through and engaging and talking to you. I've seen things like celebrities being able to injecting themselves into the in-person experience or into the virtual experience in the short term. And I know that there's things that will shift long term, but I think the short term is super relevant because those are the biggest question marks right now. So crazy things out there again.
Yeah.
Linda, how about you?
So I think that, again, being a small to mid-sized nonprofit, we're not doing big festivals, we're not doing big concerts. Our bread and potatoes are educational and social events with about anywhere from 300 to 700 people. I think we're going to do a slow burn. I think there's going to be a trickle effect where we start small and get bigger. Yes, the vaccine is going to bring us back to the new normal, but I think this is a time for tremendous explosion in creativity all across the event and experiential spectrum, where no idea is a bad idea. And since we all have time to think about this and plan it, we're all going to be sharing ideas and coming up with ways to make things safe. What's the new handshake? Is it going to be an elbow bump? And we're also looking into ways to virtually connect people at live events so that if you've got a fewer capacity or a smaller number of people attending the event, but people still want to make connections, how can we facilitate that?
Wow, that is a good point. That is a really good point, because I know some people get like really frightened around big crowds. So people have already kind of started thinking about ways to involve people that might get claustrophobic in big crowds. So it'll be interesting to see like what, you know, this pandemic, once it's over, what does interaction look like? I know we don't have too much time because this is a short panel, but I do want to talk about social influencer and marketing. I absolutely hate the word influencer because I feel like it's a scam, but I have read like several articles, one in Bloomberg, about how social media influencers, like they're seeing like a downslope in their sales, and brands are like, hey, we're rolling back our budgets and we might not have money to pay you for this post or whatever. Like, what does that even look like in the digital space? Because I know nothing about influencer marketing, but I'm curious for people that work in the digital space and nonprofits and people that actually work with influencers, like what does that actually look like post coronavirus pandemic? Anybody can.
Yeah, I'll tackle that a little bit. We integrate a lot of influencer campaigns into our bigger experiential activations. More and more than ever. I've always preached that, and a really beautiful, well-executed event is the canvas in which an influencer can paint on as an artist, right? Like, and that's our job, is to provide them with a canvas that will enable them to create such compelling content that the product does better, that it's better than them being at home, better than them, just promoting and, a product and saying, hey, buy this Fiji water bottle, etc. So I think obviously a bit of those budgets being pulled back is that all marketing spend is being pulled back across the board. And that's just an economic decision. However, I think the content quality is going down because they don't have these beautiful canvases to paint on. And I don't think it's just events that are gone. It's the opportunity to go anywhere, to travel anywhere, to do anything. That those canvases, brands do recognize them as a really important component of the influencer campaign. And without that, if you're just sitting at home, you look like a salesperson that's just saying, try this product over and over again. So we need to get back to a place where, and I guess it's not just events, of course, but the truly creative influencers are the ones that will thrive because they will reinvent and reimagine what those platforms and canvases are, so they can create compelling content, and brands will naturally find them via osmosis because their engagement is still pretty high. Also, the last piece of it all is everyone became an influencer overnight. We have an enormous number of people creating content socially. I go through yoga, like these elaborate yoga and cooking classes on Instagram Live that like my buddy creates that I didn't know knew how to make sourdough. And they've got 3 followers, so they are interrupting the feed of the people that are creating, higher quality content with bigger fan bases. So there's a bit of that saturation that will subside when people get over making banana bread. But until then, we're going to see that, we're going to see just a lot of that content.
I actually have an interesting, so this came up in conversation, traditional content, because you can't bring actors together, right? There's this idea, or shows, right? Like there's this idea that there's going to be this resurgence of existing content. Like Friends, we'll see it's, Friends has done such an incredible job, but will peak even more because the new content that requires the in-person filming doesn't exist. But what influencers always had in spades is their ability to create content from, their own phone. And to Brett's point, how do you continue to be creative? I mean, these are already people who have already flexed those muscles in some way and have created a following already. And I actually see it. And also to that point, because marketing spend is being cut back, I think they are the magazine, and you're marketing to your customer's customer, or you're marketing to the customer of your influencer. And so I see them having a massive opportunity to actually create a ton of value for brands, because if in-person events declines or doesn't exist in the same way or has more stipulations, how do you hit the end consumer? How do you hit a certain target audience? And they're absolutely well versed in it and well versed on creating content, whereas some of the larger houses, like, they're used to having 200-person content studios and production houses and after production and everything else, and we just don't have, it's too cumbersome and requires too much in person, that the influencer has its opportunity to shine. And and especially these micro influencers that have a really niche audience, we already saw that starting to take effect. People don't want to spend millions of dollars on with Huda Beauty or Something Navy or whatever. I love them, but like some of these, especially we work with so many SMBs, they don't have that kind of spend. And so I see that whole niche, very crafty influencer base really having its time in the sun.
Wonderful. Well, I've gotten the 3-minute warning. So before I go any further, is there I understand some of y'all talked about your day-to-day, but what is something that you're most excited about, like post-coronavirus pandemic? Because we're all talking about what we're worried about. I want to know what you all are excited about.
Well, I will say, just from our perspective, and our primary focus is B2B, right? We're a trade association, that's what we do. I think that a lot of these webinars and Zoom meetings are going to go away, but I think that we are going to make that part of our mix. We never did webinars before. We started doing them. We're surprised and excited about how many people are tuning into our little regional webinars. And I think it'll be a source of a new audience for us. And I think that for us, it's the beginning of a new age of incorporating webinars and podcasts and other interactive elements into adding to our arsenal, and also including them as part of what we do, enhancing our live content in ways that we hadn't done before. And that's exciting to us, and looking to see what's new on the horizon. Our virtual, our VR style events, people are coming up with ideas from companies like NVE and Founder Made that we can incorporate into our small nonprofit mix in a cost-effective way. I think this is thrilling for the future. We just have to get through it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're hitting the 1-minute mark. I don't know how this works. I don't know if it cuts us off at whenever the time is over.
It doesn't cut you off. It's just whenever.
Here it comes on.
No, but I wanted to make sure everybody that didn't have a chance to ask their questions, make sure they head over to the Slack channel, drop your questions in, so you can make sure that you get questions and answers there as well. But hey, Eric, how you doing?
Thank you so much, guys. That was awesome. Really appreciate you. And well, way to stick in there. Like, just impressed with all of you. With you guys have hyper effective businesses, and you guys are really finding ways to adapt. It's awesome.
Right back at you. Thank you so much for having us.
Y'all.
Can't wait. We'll see.
Take care, everyone. Stay strong.
All right, you too.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, guys. All right, we're just giving the next guest a couple minutes. In the meantime, I was asked to do a PSA. Just make sure you guys, when you're going out, be safe, wear masks. it's, you know, crazy out there, and don't take it for granted. So just make sure, especially right now when it seems to be peaking in the US, stay safe and stay inside if you can. If you can avoid going places, do it. We can have way more conferences and nice content like this and shows like Tiger King.